What's up guys, Tim here from Audio Tutor. Today we're talking about virtual instruments, and in particular we're talking about pads and or virtual synthesized strings and or virtual instruments that we add into the mix to add an extra depth, an extra texture, an extra layer into our arrangement. Generally, we're talking about long sustained chords or long sustained singular notes. Now, so far we've already covered, in this mini-series, we've covered saturation, and we've also looked at carving out our sound using EQ. We also did a little video that wasn't part of this mini-series, it was a separate video. We talked about why we add these sorts of virtual instruments into the mix, why we add them into the arrangement, and how we arrange that instrument, how we arrange the chords, etc. If you haven't seen those videos, I'm going to put a link or a few links into the video description for you to check out. Go watch those, catch up with us here, and then come straight back over to watch this third and final part of the mini-series. So welcome to you, third and final part here of the mini-series. We're talking about pads and synthesized strings, virtual instruments. So, before we do anything, let's have a listen to how our cinema strings here are sounding so far. Alright, so they're sounding really cool. We've carved out some of that muddiness in there with the EQ in the previous video, and we've done a bit of saturation to kind of bring things to life a bit. It's sounding really cool, but something I want you to have a look at now is the waveform down here. So we can see here we've got a waveform, and we can see that the level, the volume level, is going up and down here. We've sort of got, we're going up here, we've got peaks here, and over here, and so we can see that the volume is kind of drastically changing, going up and down, and that is because of the synthesizer we're using is kind of fading in and out and doing all these filters and that sort of thing, which is cool, but we want to kind of level that out a bit. We want, because in the mix we want to be able to always hear that synthesizer playing, we need to kind of level that volume out a bit so we've got something a bit more consistent so we can always hear that synthesizer playing. How do we do that? Well, we use something called a compressor, and you may have used a compressor before. If you're new to compressing things, you may have used compressors on drums or something like that. It is a bit more fun using compressors on drums because you can be a bit more experimental. For instruments like this, you've got to be a bit more gentle with your compression, a bit more careful. It's a bit more of a delicate process. So I've got this Acoustica Tan compressor. It's a very nice plugin. Go and check it out on Google or whatever. It is a really nice sounding emulation plugin here with that real authentic analog grit to it. And what am I doing here? I've dialed back the threshold until we have around 3 to 4 dB of gain reduction. That's kind of my go-to in gain reduction on compressors. 3 to 4 dB, then you know you're not affecting the sound too much, too drastically, but you are doing something. Then I've got the ratio at 2 to 1 here, and the attack is, well, it's in the middle of this dial, but I would say that's rather slow. So that's a rather slow attack. I've got a rather fast release there at 0.4. The gain is, we're making up that gain again. So as I said, the gain reduction is 3 to 4 dB. So we're making that back up again with 3 to 4 dB of makeup gain. And we're all the way wet on this dry wet knob here. I don't have the pre on because we've already done a bit of saturation. So we don't need to do any more. So let's have a listen with this compressor on. Okay, things are sounding really nice there. Essentially, what we're doing is we are taking some of these peaks and chopping them off. And we're raising the gain of the quiet parts here. We're taking the loud parts down and the quiet parts up. And what that's going to do to the waveform here is, rather than being very up and down on the level here, you can see all these little mountain peaks here. What we're going to be doing is evening that out and making it look more like a sausage rather than all these little mountain peaks. We're making more of a sausage shape so that the level is more consistent and we can constantly hear those cinema strings in the mix. Now, that was an example with our external plugin there, an external plugin of a really cool sounding compressor. But let's have a look at a stock compressor that we get here in Logic. This is a really nice Studio VCA compressor. It sounds very nice, and as most VCAs, it's very sort of precise in its action. So I've set it up already. Let's have a little listen to how that one sounds. Okay, so we can see in that little graph, before it disappears here, we can see in that little graph, we're taking out some of those peaks. You can kind of see the action there. I think that's a really nice feature on these Logic stock compressors, is you can see the action you're making on the compressor. But essentially we're doing the same thing with either compressor. Compressors all sound a little bit different, and I'm sure you will get into all those debates as time goes on. We are essentially doing the same thing. We're taking off 3 to 4 dB in our gain reduction, and then we're making up that 3 to 4 in our makeup gain. We're essentially just taking down those peaks, taking the loud stuff down and the quiet stuff up, and that levels out our volume a bit more and makes sure we can hear those virtual strings all the way through our mix. So let's have a listen. We've been listening in solo time and time again. Let's have a listen to the whole mix, and I'll take out this compressor and put it back in, and we can see the difference we're making. And I'm thinking about you. So you will have noticed there that when I took the compressor out, the cinema strings kind of disappeared. You couldn't really hear them anymore in the entire mix because there's so many other things going on. And when I brought that compressor back in, suddenly you could just hear it in the background. Yes, it is quiet in the background. That's the whole point of this instrument, but we still need to be able to hear it. There's no point in writing and recording that beautiful arrangement and then you can't hear it in the mix. You've got to be able to hear every instrument. So there you have it. Our 3 steps to getting better sounding virtual pads and synthesized strings in your mix. Our first step was saturation. Second step, we carved out our sound using EQ. And our third step, we used a compressor to bring that sound a bit more into the foreground so we can still hear it in our mix. Now, I do have a little bonus for you here, something a little extra to bring that sound into a real space, a real room, give it a bit more of that authentic vibe. And that is an effect called reverb. Now, you'll notice I've got a little send down here, and if I turn that on, you'll hear a little bit of a difference in the sound. Let me solo it. Alright, so we're going pretty heavy on that reverb, and it's just bringing it into a real space and really filling out that width in the mix, so there's a little bonus for you there. If you are interested in recording and mixing, you want to get started, but you don't know what equipment you need to get started, well, I have some good news for you. I have written a 25-page free, absolutely free ebook for you to download. I will put the link in the description. The ebook contains all of the equipment you're going to need to get started recording and mixing on an affordable budget. It contains a full list of recommendations, my personal recommendations, also the equipment that I personally used when I started recording and mixing. There's even a chart at the very back of the book that helps you keep track of your spending and budgeting, etc. So if you want to check that out, I will put a link in the video description, or you can head over to facebook.com/audio tutor. There'll be a link over there as well. Essentially, it takes you to a landing page, you type in your email address for me, and you download the ebook. I'm really looking forward to helping you out, getting started recording and mixing. So for now, guys, thank you very much for watching this mini-series on pads and strings. Make sure you check out all the videos in this mini-series. Don't just watch this one. Make sure you've watched all the others as well, so you get a full run through the whole processing chain of these Cinema strings. Make sure you also check out the whole back catalogue of all the videos on the Audio Tutor Facebook page or YouTube page. Check them all out. They're free, here to help you get better at recording and mixing and songwriting. For now, guys, my name's Tim from Audio Tutor. See you soon. Ciao.